Cold calling technology. Best practices for tech companies in 2025. Cold calling in 2025. Harder, but still a growth lever. If you sell technology in 2025, cold calling feels like hard mode for a reason. Decision committees are bigger, inboxes are noisier, and buyers do most of their research before they ever talk to sales. But phone outreach still matters because it's one of the fastest ways to qualify fit, create urgency, and surface real objections in real time. The mistake we see is treating calls like a brute force volume game, where the plan is simply more dials. In today's market, raw activity without targeting, sequencing, and dialer discipline just produces fatigue, spam flags, and mediocre pipeline. Instead, high-performing teams run calling like a measurable channel. They build a clean stack, orchestrate calls with email and LinkedIn outreach, and manage to outcomes like meetings per rep hour. Whether you're building an in-house SDR org, working with an outsourced sales team, or partnering with a cold calling agency, the winning formula is the same: relevant lists, tight workflows, and constant iteration. The 2025 benchmark reality, and why it still pencils out. The baseline numbers are blunt. Average dial-to-meeting performance sits around 2.3% in 2025, which is roughly one meeting per 43 dials. And technology software conversion can be closer to 0.95% when the ICP isn't tight and the motion isn't multi-touch. Connect rates typically land in the 3 to 10% range, which is why many teams report needing 18+ dials to reach one live prospect. Add in the reality that buyers spend only about 17% of their journey with vendors, and you get the real job of calling in 2025. Be instantly relevant when you do earn a minute. When you set expectations correctly, you can actually build a predictable model and improve it. Use the table below as a practical starting point for a tech SDR team, then benchmark by segment, persona, and list source instead of averaging everything together. Build a focused cold calling tech stack, not a tool pile. For most B2B tech orgs, the modern stack is simpler than people think. A CRM as the source of truth, a sales engagement platform to run multi-channel cadences, a power or predictive dialer, and conversation intelligence for coaching. When these systems don't sync cleanly, your SDRs end up tab hopping, data gets stale, and leaders manage by opinions instead of funnel math. List quality is the multiplier. Generic data produces generic conversations, and generic conversations get ignored. That's why strong teams invest in segmentation by firmographics, technographics, and triggers, often pairing their stack with list-building services or a specialized SDR agency that can keep coverage fresh without burning rep hours on research. Cold calling also shouldn't be isolated from the rest of outbound. The best programs run calls inside a broader outbound sales agency-style workflow, where email and LinkedIn outreach services warm the account and call priority is driven by engagement signals, so more cold calls behave like warm conversations. Operationalize dialer-led call blocks without damaging your brand. Manual dialing is a hidden tax. It steals time with ringing, voicemails, and misdials, which is fatal when it takes 18+ dials to reach one prospect. This is where a dialer becomes a performance lever, not a convenience feature, especially for B2B cold calling services that need consistent throughput and reporting. Power dialers can meaningfully increase talk time by automating the dead air between calls, with vendors claiming up to 400% more talk time in the right workflow. Predictive dialing can push productivity even further in high-volume environments, with reported gains around 200 to 300% versus manual dialing. But you have to match the mode to your audience and risk tolerance. We recommend letting data, not ego, drive dialer settings. Start conservative, watch talk time, abandon rate, and meetings per hour, then tune from there. If you push pacing too aggressively or use sloppy local presence, you'll trigger spam labeling and shrink your reachable universe. In 2025, protecting call reputation is part of protecting pipeline. Cold calling isn't a script you memorize. It's a channel you engineer, measure, and optimize. AI that makes calls warmer, not robotic. AI is no longer a nice-to-have add-on for cold call services. It's a workflow upgrade that keeps reps selling instead of doing admin. McKinsey estimates generative AI could unlock $0.8 to $1.2 trillion in annual productivity across sales and marketing. And the most practical share of that value comes from automating research, summarization, and follow-up tasks. The best use of AI in cold calling is to make calls warmer, not just faster. Before each call, Gen AI can generate 1 or 2 context points from public signals, recent engagement, or product usage. Then, after the call, it can push clean notes and next steps into the CRM, so SDRs don't spend 10 minutes typing what the buyer already said. What you want to avoid is reading AI-generated scripts word for word. Tech buyers can smell automation immediately. And since 50 to 60% of B2B buyers still want phone contact at some point, the goal is to earn a real conversation with relevance, curiosity, and crisp discovery, not to sound clever for 30 seconds. Common mistakes tech teams make and the fixes that work. One common failure pattern is celebrating activity and ignoring outcomes. When teams reward dials instead of connects, conversations, and meetings per rep hour, SDRs learn to game the system and the program quietly degrades. In a market where average success may hover near 2.3%, you can't afford busy work efficiency. Another mistake is buying broad lists and calling everyone the same way. Poor data creates compliance risk, tanks connect rates, and burns your brand. The fix is segment-first execution, where your messaging and cadence change by ICP slice, and your dialer is fed by prioritized, scrubbed, and enriched data rather than a random export. Finally, many teams run calls in a silo from email, LinkedIn, and intent signals, which keeps every interaction cold. If you already use a cold email agency or outbound sequencing, route those engagement signals into your calling queue so the SDR's day starts with the prospects most likely to pick up and respond, not the ones least likely to care. Coach from call reality, then optimize like a performance channel. Conversation intelligence is where tech teams stop guessing. Call recording and analysis lets you measure talk ratios, objection patterns, and the phrases that correlate with meetings. So coaching becomes a weekly operating system instead of try this new script whiplash. Treat cold calling as a channel the way you would paid acquisition. Build 2 or 3 opener frameworks, test them against the same segment, and track what happens to connect to meeting conversion. The point is not to chase vanity metrics. The point is to isolate what actually moves outcomes in your funnel and then standardize it into playbooks. If you want a simple cadence for improvement, commit to reviewing a few recordings per rep each week and documenting the repeatable behaviors that win. Over time, that discipline raises conversion above the 0.95% tech software baseline by improving discovery depth and next step control, not by trying harder. Next steps. Build it in-house or outsource execution in 2025. A practical first move is a funnel audit by segment. Map dials to connects to conversations to meetings to opportunities. Then compare the weak link to 2025 benchmarks. Most teams don't have a calling problem. They have a list quality, prioritization, or coaching problem that shows up once you measure the whole system consistently. From there, standardize the stack and operating rhythm before you add more tools. When your CRM, engagement platform, dialer, and conversation intelligence are integrated, you can run predictable call blocks, orchestrate touches across channels, and protect compliance and call reputation without slowing reps down. If you don't have the management bandwidth, recruiting engine, or infrastructure to stand this up quickly, sales outsourcing can be the fastest path to results, especially for teams exploring pay-per-meeting lead generation or an outsourced SDR pod. At SalesHive, we've built our process to plug into client CRMs and run modern B2B cold calling as part of a full outbound program, which is why many tech teams evaluate us as both a B2B sales agency and an SDR agency when they need speed without losing control of ICP and qualification.